Good evening, folks. Dave Jorgensen here once again. And I'd just like to kind of take my hat off to the dads. You know, my father was born, he was one of 12 children. There were actually 13, but one died as a baby. And he only made it to the 8th grade because they had to work. Everybody worked. They got farmed out to other farmers, and the money went to help feed the whole family. And I tell you, when you have a family of 12, that's a big family. So my dad, he didn't grow up with a lot. He made it to the 8th grade, and after that, he didn't have an education. He got married to my mom in the early 40s, and just shortly after that, he got drafted into World War II. And they didn't see each other for 36 months. When I was in the Army, we got to come, we only went over for a year, and we got an R&R in between. So if we were married, we could come home or meet our wives in Hawaii or someplace, and his teeth are wanting to fall out. Anyway, I should have glued them in, I guess. But all his life, the first 5 years of my life, they moved all around the Vancouver area, clear up to North Bonneville. He tried to farm on my grandpa's farm, and that didn't work out. Anyway, little sawmill work here and there. And I remember he worked on this ranch, egg ranch. I may have to finish this video up without any teeth. Anyway, when I was 5 in 1951 or 2, they moved to California, Northern California in the Redwood area. And all the family had been making remarks that my dad will never settle down. But he settled down and he worked in that redwood mill for 18 years. Pulling lumber on a green chain, working in the factory, and, other part-time jobs, because he had 5 kids. There were 5 of us, and they put us all through church school, which is more expensive than just sending your kids to public school. Now, my dad, they cleaned the church. Us kids helped clean the church, so we actually helped earn our tuition. And anyway, he just learned to get by on a little. They didn't make much money, but things weren't near expensive back then either. My dad never did buy a brand new car. He'd buy them 4, 5, 6 years old and drive them until his kid tore out the transmission or something. I wouldn't say that happened, but it did. And anyway, us thoughtless, stupid kids. Anyway, he just, there was no way he would mortgage his home or take a loan out on his home. So he finally got that paid for, the last, clear through the 60s, he was putting kids through school. And then I went to college. He didn't have to help me. I got all the benefits that I needed with my wife working and being staff. But my brother went through college, but he wasn't quite as fortunate. My dad tried to help him as much as he could. And so anyway, my dad, just all of his life, he never spent money like I spend money. He spent money like a responsible person, I grew up that way, and I just didn't like being tied down and not having anything, being able to go out to eat, and so I do a lot of those things that my dad never even thought about doing. When I got older, they did some of that. These smorgasbords. Out west, they used to go to the King's Table, and and then later on, it became the Hometown Buffet. And I think that one went out of town there where they live too now. But no, he learned to be responsible. You know, I have post-traumatic stress disorder, and that's a bad deal. But I may have actually gotten it from growing up with my dad. Oh, he had a terrible temper. I mean, he was a good Christian man, but that post-traumatic stress disorder will just, you don't even know why. You think you're going crazy. If anybody had post-traumatic stress disorder, my dad did, from World War II. They called it shell shock back then. But they didn't get compensation for it like we do today. And, my dad, I mean, he had it 150%. It really, really was sad. But he lived with it, and there's a lot of people back then that lived with that. My dad wouldn't even talk about World War II, except visiting friends, and, little good things there and there. But he wouldn't, all he ever said, the most he ever said was to me when I went to Vietnam. He said, "Watch out for mines." He says, "My buddy stepped on one and we could only find enough to put in a little box." And, that was the only thing he ever said to me about anything happening in World War II. He was with a tank unit. Anyway, he was a medic. But my hat is off to stable people that are responsible. Now, I really wish that I had been and was as responsible with the way I do things as my dad was. I love my dad. He passed away in 2002. And at about 80, I think he was 82. But he had a heart condition. He had asthma really bad all his life, and he was having trouble breathing one morning. And with his asthma, he had that from the time I was a kid. He was short-winded. And he just woke, he was sitting up in a chair, went to take a breathing treatment, and had a heart attack. Called my mom, said, "I need you." She went out there, and he was just sitting there in the chair. But we need to think about those people that raised us. And we need to be responsible, and we need to respect them and imitate more of their ways than we do today. I know I need to. And I just wanted to share that with you tonight because I think it's meaningful in life to realize who we are and where we came from and why we do the things that we do. I'm finally doing something about it to find a better way, and you know what that is, but I'm not here to talk about that tonight. I just, in closing, would like to remind you to click the button below and study this thing out. Make sure that it's not for you, and that you're not missing out on something that you might really like. So I'll leave it there for tonight, and we'll catch you tomorrow. Bye-bye.